Welcome to the Give Back Lab. I'm your host, Daniella You've entered a space where bold voices, real stories, and unfiltered conversations come to life. Here in the lab, we're breaking bias, shifting thinking, and exploring the power of giving back through truth, vulnerability, and diverse perspectives. We celebrate diversity of thought and everything beautiful that makes us human. This isn't just talk, it's real, it's raw, and it's exactly the kind of space we need. We're unlearning, relearning, and evolving together. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Give Back Lab. Today, I am honored to be joined by Gregory Archibald, who is ex-military leader, thought promoter. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. I love following your newsletter on LinkedIn. For those of you who have not seen it yet, please go check it out. There are some really great tidbits of knowledge and great stories of experiences that he shares on a weekly basis. So I encourage you to look him up and connect. Is really a wealth of knowledge and such an inspiration. Thank you for joining us here today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do. What do you want the world to know about who Gregory is?
Well, first of all, let's say thank you so much for having me on the show. I know we've been working back and forth trying to get our schedules to align. So it's definitely great to be here. Um, like I said, I retired from the military after 33 years. I served in the Army on active duty. The first half of my career I spent in emergency medicine. So picture something like a paramedic or an EMT kind of deal. So I did that for a while. And then my story kind of took a different path. I was a senior non-commissioned officer, went through the ranks, and then I decided to go to officer candidate school, and I became a commissioned officer, and I spent my last 10 years in the military police corps, go figure. So I basically worked in law enforcement and security. I've done everything from worked in Guantanamo Bay with the detention operations that
Wow.
many of you will be familiar with. I've run law enforcement detachments, basically like your local police department. And I ran what we will consider a county jail in Germany for my last couple
Wow.
years. And I worked as a advisor to the continent of Africa on security type of issues. I retired about a year and a half ago, and I've just been really pursuing my passion for leadership. So I get an opportunity to talk to different companies, different individuals about leadership. I also have the opportunity to go sometimes and work on like workshops for different leaders to get them spun up and let them see their potential. I am a product of good leadership, and it is truly my passion to go out and share that passion, that desire with everyone who will have me around.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your service.
Oh,
It
thank you. It was a great
it's
time. It
it's
was a great
amazing.
time.
Amazing and so amazing to hear you say that. I know that it is a tremendous sacrifice for everyone involved, not only the soldiers out there on the front lines and in the back office, so to say, but also for the families that they have. And so thank you and your family for your service. And I'm so thankful that you're here today to share with us your learnings. So you go from EMT medical and then you go into law enforcement. How does that career transition happen, right? I guess where did you decide, at what point in your life did you decide I want to join the military? And then when you do that, what does that look like for any of our audience that are really maybe thinking about joining the military and trying to figure out what job they go for and what branch they go for? How did that all work for you? When did do you come from a long line of family of military people? Because I know that happens a lot, and that's just the profession of the family. What's your story? What has your journey been? Share with
Wow.
us.
So that is a long question that's
Yeah,
gonna be very it's a good one though. It's a good story. It's a good story. So,
I love it.
um, I will say that during my teenage years and my post-teenage years, I was not necessarily what we would call a stellar individual. There was a huge period of there where I was homeless. Um, I was in the streets. I was alcohol, drugs. I was just not doing the right thing. Uh, I to not to drag into that story, but that's pretty much where I was. I had an epiphany and woke up, went and got some help, and I ended up in a place called Cadenzia. It was a rehabilitation center, and as part of my exit process, of all things, I landed a job as a security guard in a mall in downtown Harrisburg, which is the capital of Pennsylvania, where I was living at the time. And then my boss, I was working because I was trying to prove myself. I was trying to say, "Hey, this is what this is what people do
Mm,
so they can succeed up the ladder." And this is what I was trying to do. And then one day out of the blue, I had been with the company for a while, and I had a really interesting story that happened. So there was a government building right next to where the mall was, and there was a guy who basically got robbed. And I ended up catching the person who helped, uh, who did the robbery. And this guy worked for like one of the senators for our state. So when my
wow.
boss, yeah, so my boss knew my background. So I didn't think actually the army would take me. So I asked this guy to help me out, and he made some calls on my behalf. And my boss was actually a retired military officer, and he said that I needed to be doing more with my life than doing what I was doing. And then I I ended up I signed up for the army, and it was it was good for me, and I loved doing what I was doing. My parents, when I was younger, had me take one of those tests to kind of see what you would do. So, my two jobs, people say, "How do you go from emergency medicine to law enforcement?" For me, those were the two careers that I've always wanted to do. And they both revolve around helping people. So, doing what I
Mm,
do now, it has just come full circle. Uh, so the first half of my career, I spent in a variety of different places. I worked in hospitals, medical people assigned to different units, providing medical support for a variety of things. And one of my last units when I was enlisted, I was working for the Special Operations Command, and my boss was like, "Hey, you ever think about going to officer candidate school? Kind of like a bridge course between being enlisted and being an officer." And I said, "You know what? Nah, never thought." Plus, I was at that time, for Army terminology, I was a little bit older, so I didn't necessarily think
mm,
that there was going to be an age requirement, those kinds of things. But I decided, hey, I'm going to go for it. So I did, went through the process, and the you don't necessarily get to pick what field you're going to go into. You get to give like your top 3 or 4
hmm.
choices, and the army actually picks for you. And it was lucky that the
Right.
choices that I picked, I was able to get one of my top 3 choices, and then I became
Mm,
a military
awesome.
police officer and finished off the rest of my career at about 33 years and like 2 months.
Wow. Wow. I find that very inspirational. There's a lot of people who have trouble youth, right? They're trouble youth, whether it be through their own doing or things that happened around them. So I'm so thankful and I respect the fact that you were able to really pull yourself up, right? Because a lot of what drives us is our internal want and need and belief that we can be better and we are better. And it's always easier to just blame it on somebody else. So I find it very inspirational that you were able to do that. And I love the fact that you found mentors essentially through your life, and that you are now a mentor. I love that, right? That you're out there speaking and sharing your story and sharing stories of the military. I would love to hear in your 33-year career, what kind of stories that resonated with you and that you still hold on to, right? Because there's a lot of grit and grind in the military. There's a lot of, are they going to break me down? Have they broken me? Right? That's how you build great soldiers, right? Resilience and grit, determination. So, what are some of those stories? I know I read a fascinating one recently on one of the newsletters that you shared, and I don't know if you remember that one, but if you
Wow.
if you want to share that one,
There
but
are
yeah,
so many different ones. I will start to go back to the one when we first started was, talking about people who think about joining the military. I think that each branch of service is very unique in certain things.
mm,
So I would say first you have to decide what it is that you want. Um,
right,
then some careers in the military do not necessarily transfer to a to a corporate office. So you have to really decide what it is that you want to do. Does that job
mm-hmm,
promote well within that branch of service? And is there a transferable skill that you can learn? And I'll give you a good example. Okay. If you are a, let's say, cyber defense person, right? There are
right,
only so many of those positions throughout, let's say, the Army.
mm-hmm,
So they're going to be a phenomenal skill if you transition out of the military, but it may not necessarily promote so well. But if you like it, so you get two out of the three, if that makes any sense.
right,
For here's another example. So you can be infantry, not necessarily a
mm,
transferable skill, but if you like it, it definitely promotes well. But one of the what we'll call intangible skills, if you reach the senior ranks, leadership is leadership regardless of where you go. But if you're looking for technical skills, like infantry is probably not going to be one. You're going to be looking for more of your medical, your communications, your computers, and those types of things. So I would tell anyone
right,
who would be looking for a military career to think about what it is that you like, talk to the recruiters about how those jobs promote, and are you going to be able to take a transferable skill when you leave the military, if it's whichever the branches are. And then, I get this one question all the time. What is something that I did not know before I went in the military that I definitely realized when I leave? And that
mm,
number one thing is that you can do more than you think you can do. And, you talk about teaching people grit and you talk about, breaking them down to build them back up. I think that is the one key that if you spend 33 years or if you spend 5 years, you will learn that you can do more than you think you could do. And that starts from
right,
basic training. Like who thinks that they can walk with an 80-pound backpack 12 miles? Uh, who thinks that they can climb on the outside of a ladder, obstacle courses, you know 20, 30 feet in the air? Who thinks that they can jump in the pools
it's
with full
amazing,
gear and swim? I mean, who thinks that people you don't just wake up and do this, right? um
right,
like I was one of the lucky ones who had the opportunity to jump out of airplanes while I was during my Army career. And
mm,
the big joke is, why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? Because
yeah,
it's exciting. That's why. I mean, there's like everyone could say, oh, this, that, and the other thing, but the bottom line is jumping out of airplanes is cool. And
yeah, yeah,
that's
very
just
cool.
what it is. But it also it teaches you a mindset that it is scary jumping out of an airplane, but you control your mind to say, "I can do this." Are you scared? Yes. But the difference between having fear and being a coward is a coward allows fear to overtake them. And that's a lesson I teach,
Right.
young people a lot of times in schools and in sports is that you have to be able to take and say, "Hey, I can do this despite this fear I have." And that fear could be, for young people going into college. "Oh, I'm scared to go," but you've got to convince yourself that you can. Uh, so for me, one of the biggest lessons that I learned in the military that I take with me and I share with corporate America is that you can do more than you think you can. Secondly, leadership is the key to every organization. The great
Right.
organizations that I belong to for the years I was in the military simply comes down to leadership. I don't care if we were in Afghanistan and under miserable conditions. If you have good leadership, it's a wrap. Everything else just seems to fall into place. Uh, and when you have those good leaders, it changes not only for you, but it changes the culture of that organization. I still get in touch
Yeah.
with people who I've served with for years, or I know their kids. I've watched their kids grow up. Now most of them now are, high school, getting ready to go into college. But when they were little, I remember that. We had those kinds of bonds. So I don't think that many corporate organizations have that kind of unity, which is what a lot of veterans chase when they leave. They go to
Right.
organizations and they're looking for that kind of bond. So for me, I think teaching organizations to try to develop that are some of the lessons that I learned.
Right. I, so I have two questions. I'll give
Okay.
them both to you, and we can. One is around what are the most important leadership traits that you feel um, the military service has instilled in you, right? And that have helped you to assimilate into back into civilization out of the military, right?
Okay.
Back as a civilian. Um, what are those important leadership traits? And as we develop and we grow in our spaces, the idea is that we can focus on take a look at those, right? I want to talk about those so we can take a look at them, and I would love to take a look at them for myself to say, from my leadership perspective, where am I on the weak to strong um range in these different spaces? So which leadership traits do you feel that were most valuable in the military that you don't necessarily if you were going to tell people in business and in the civilian life, focus on these things, right? There's leadership in the military and there's leadership in civilian life. What's the bridge? Do you see one? You may not see one.
I
What
see.
what what's missing, right? What do we not in civilian worlds attach as much passion or attention to that you think is a miss?
All right.
Does that make
The
sense?
the first the first thing I will say is, and that's a really good question. The first thing I think is probably the most important is that you have to make leadership education a priority in your organization. And here's the example that I give you. Um, we we take corporate America takes good people and they say, "You know what? You are a superstar, right? You are a superstar. So we are going to promote you to this position, and now you're going to lead. Go with God, young man, young woman, and lead." And then we send you off, and then we wonder why, when HR surveys come back, that we have a problem holding on to good quality people. because people will leave for low pay, people will leave for a tough mission, but they will stay for good leadership. I love my boss and I love my team. Yep, I may not get paid a whole lot, but I love doing what I do. So, number one,
Yeah.
corporate America needs to spend more time on leadership education because most leaders ask them, how much training did you get before you became a senior vice president? You might go to uh, some type of workshop that you might spend a day or two. And if you pull them aside without their boss being there, they'll probably tell you the training wasn't even worth the time that they spent, but it's probably in a decent place. So it becomes a boondoggle. So most of the times, I
Right.
think corporate organizations need to do that. And with that being said, the three things that are free and cheap, and I tell companies this all the time: purpose. We grow up in an environment where leadership, a lot of people stem it from like parenting. Hey, so I can't like ground my employees, but it's do what I say because I'm the boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have found that the leaders who give you purpose, the why behind the work and why you are doing, you get better results every time because people have to understand why it is that they're doing whatever it is. Because they may not necessarily see the bigger picture, but they should understand, and it's your job as the leader to give them that bigger picture. Understand, for example, when I was in the military, we had to, in my medical days, we had to have so much equipment, and we were told we had to have 3 days of supplies of medical gear. It was until I had reached way up the ranks before I figured out why. Because
Mm.
before the next level of medical care would come, it would take them 3 days to set up and do everything. I never understood that until later on, right? So, would
Right.
that have changed the way I've packed? Probably. But you have to give your people the purpose behind what they're doing. The second thing that I tell everyone is
Right.
presence. You cannot lead from behind a desk, period. If it's important to you, then as a leader, then you should be there. And people say, well, I've got meetings, blah, 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 blah. Those are excuses, and excuses only sound good to the person that's making them. As a leader, your
Mm.
job is to be present. Well, we work in hybrid working environments. I worked for a company, and it was I was doing an internship, and I had the lady that I was working for. She put time on her schedule, uninterrupted, every week to sit down and talk with me, to talk about the project I was working on, and a lot of it was just to see how I was doing. That's that's leadership presence. You know,
Right.
I've had I've had
Yeah.
leaders who they show up, don't just show up in the best of times. You need to show up in the worst times. When your team has to work overtime on a project, you can't be at the golf course. They've got to see you. You
Right.
can't just
Right.
say, "Well, I need you guys to do this," but hey, good luck with that as they see you walking out of the door. So I think leadership
Right.
presence is the next one. And the last one, which is really easy for me, is leaders have to be passionate about whatever it is they're doing. Um, I
Right.
think you and I might be old enough to remember the Charlie Brown commercial, right? And I use this one as an example. The teacher who would sound and be like, "Wah, wah, 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 wah."
Mm.
If
Wah, wah,
you,
wah,
if
wah, wah.
yeah, exactly. If you have that level of energy when you come into the office, how do you expect your people to be excited about the days ahead? I'm not saying you have to have, Greg's energy because I can be
Right.
a little bit over the top, right? But the bottom line is, if you are not excited, how do you expect your team to be excited about the days ahead? And so you have to give your people purpose.
Right.
Yeah, you have to be present, and you have to be passionate. I think the main thing that everyone needs to to realize, and regardless of what environment, if it's in the military or if it's in the corporate culture, is purpose, presence, and passion. You know, people have to understand why they're doing what they're doing. You have to, your presence is important. I don't care if you were working remotely. I don't. It doesn't necessarily matter why. I had a supervisor when I was doing an internship, and she set up time with me every week to talk about the projects, and but most importantly, she wanted to just see how I was doing. And your passion has to be the igniter for your organization. And, some leaders will say, I had a leader ask me during a workshop that I was running. He said, "Well, hey, tell me, what am I supposed to do if I just, I'm having a bad day?" And I laughed. Probably shouldn't have laughed, but I laughed because I said, "You are allowed to have a bad day from the time you wake up in the morning until the time your toes hit the ground of the parking lot of your organization." Why? Because your people deserve better. Your people deserve your full and undivided attention and passion every day. Just because you got cut off or you and your significant other got into an argument, that has nothing to do with the people that work for you. They don't deserve
Right.
not knowing what
Right.
type of individual that you are. And I think one of the last things that I'll
Right.
throw in there that I think helped me was creating value. And here's one thing, and then I'll we'll keep going. But the one thing that you have to create value within your organization, and nothing says devalue like being late.
Right.
Leaders need
Right.
to be on time. If you schedule a meeting at 9 o'clock in person or Zoom, 9 o'clock is when we start talking. We don't show up and say, "Oh, sorry, I'm late." Well, because some people had to adjust their schedules to meet you. So you just said your time is more valuable than mine. So ask
Right.
yourself, are you the leader that is always, "Oh, I'm sorry I was late. Oh, I'm sorry I was late"? You devalue your people every time you do that because you're telling them that they don't matter, as your time is more important than theirs. And how are they supposed to do the work that you need them to do if they're waiting on you to show up to meetings? And that one hits a lot of people because for a lot of people, it's just true. There's never a reason that you should be late, especially when you have other people, let's say, coming to a different building or, linking up different time zones. Your timing is of importance. So make sure that one of the things you're doing is creating value. And one of the ways you can do that is simply as a leader being on time.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that resonates with me, right? As leaders, we have expectations of our staff, how they behave, that they leave their personal things at home or whatever it is, right? And we have expectations. So sorry, Charlie, we still need to deliver this, right? And
Absolutely.
it is very accurate that leaders should lead by example, right? And so everything that you expect your staff to do or ways you expect them to behave, you should expect that of yourself and give that of yourself times 15, right? And I say times 15, it's the 15-minute bridge between meetings to make sure that you're not disrespectful for the person that ran over, and then disrespectful for the person that's waiting for you, right? Or disrespectful for yourself because you need a bio break. I mean, in corporate, we have such a uh, culture of meetings, that it's important that we also build in time to be able to be successful in the expectation of what we expect of ourselves and others. But I agree with you 1000%, right? Lead by example, be there. I mean, I came out of a news organization, so there were times where we were, news happens. We're working in the middle of the night, and whether it's in person or over Zoom, I may not be able to do the technical coding or whatever needs to happen and whatever they're working on, but I sure as heck can go get them coffee, or I could go get a pizza, right? And so it is about being able as a leader, to me, I believe, is about being able to be whatever it is that you need to be in the moment that you need to be in it to get your crew, your troop, your team over the line, right? Success is everybody doing the part that they need to do in the moment to make it successful, right? You cannot sit on a pedestal and tell a team, go make it successful, and then take all of the credit. It doesn't work. It doesn't work long term. It may work for you the first time. It may work for you the second time. By the third time, as you said before, people are going to leave. They're going to leave because the leadership isn't good. They're going to leave because they're going to say, hmm, I'm not getting paid enough to do this, right? And you're taking all of the credit. I'm not getting any of the accolades of the hard work, right? We work through the night. We got this delivered, and you are now presenting to whoever your senior leadership of how great this was in delivery, and the team is sitting there, half asleep because they worked all night.
They worked all
Um,
night.
yeah, yeah. And so I agree with you 1,000% that the strongest leaders are in the trenches, right? They're in the trenches, and they're doing what they would expect their staff to do plus 15, plus
And when you're in the
15%, plus 15
trenches, I
minutes.
I think I think one of the things that, you know, um and again, in the corporate structure, sometimes it's you can still do this, and it makes a lot of sense, is so why are you there, right? You're building value, but more importantly, you're building trust, right?
Right,
People,
right,
Maya Angelou has a quote. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never ever forget how you made them feel, right?
absolutely.
When you show up to your job and your people know that even if what we're doing is hard, it's under miserable conditions, if they know that their leader is fighting for them and giving them all the resources that they need, they'll do anything for you. Now, like, in the military, hey, the whole charge the hill thing, right? But in corporate America, it's the same way. You have tasks that have to be done, and sometimes you don't have all the resources. You may not. It may be 5 o'clock on a Friday when everyone's starting to walk out, and then, hey, something happened. We got to do this. Hey, I need everyone to stay. No one's going to be happy about that. But are you the leader
Right.
who is consistently there with your team? That's the kind of trust that you build, where you need to have that kind of trust in those types of environments, because then everyone says, yeah, this stinks, but hey, let's collectively get it done. You can't say, hey, you guys got to stay, but hey, I'm going to go enjoy my weekend, I'll see you later.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. And I think that quote is really powerful because I think that we lose that feeling part as we go through corporate life, right? And we're in the trenches and we have to deliver, and I don't care how you feel about it, just get it done, right? We lose sight of the people that are human, that are delivering, and then those people decide they don't want to give you that grit and determination anymore, right? They
Right.
don't want to go that extra mile. They don't feel accountable to this delivery, um, because they're disrespected. So I think it's really important to always consider people and their feelings as humans, because it's a level of respect that, as a leader, if you command respect, you earn respect, right? You earn the respect by giving the respect to others. So I find that I love that quote. I love it. So tell me about what what kind of audiences do you speak to about leadership right now, and what's trending? What's resonating in that space?
I
What
one
what
of the
what do you
one of the things, I have an opportunity to talk to startups where the team is really everyone on the team is a leader in the sense
Yeah,
because the companies are small. I've
right.
talked to really large companies with CEOs, CFOs, and the every O on the C-suite shows up. I think one of the things that I hear from CEOs is uh, they want their time back, right?
Mm,
So how do you, as a team member, help your team, i.e., helping your boss gain time back? You're taking things off, right? But a lot of times the CEOs don't give the the leeway to the rest of their managers to say, "Hey, anything that deals with finances, you got it. If you need me to make a decision, then let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to expect you to make a decision." Right. So
right,
you as a leader, you have to be able to make sure that your people understand what we would call in the military your left and your right limits are. Where can I make decisions that I don't need to come and ask for your guidance? Now, if I don't know what to do, that's one thing. But if you're in the C-suite, then you do need to be able to make decisions. And I think that that's one of the things that is trending is that the how do I gain time back throughout the day, right?
right,
And the other thing is a lot of managers feel that they don't have their people's trust. So that's kind of where I came up with the purpose, the presence, and the passion piece is that your people will work harder for you if they know like you have their backs, that you trust them. You're going to get their trust, and they'll do whatever you need. But a lot of people don't do that because they're not exactly, I think a lot of times, and again it goes back to the education, the leadership education piece. I
right,
tell people all the time, you know leaders have to be made. You can't just throw someone into a leadership position and expect them to know how to do something. They can be a technical expert, absolutely, but do
right,
they know how to lead people? Do they know how to build trust? Do they know simple things like how to create a rotating schedule? You expect them to do that because you think, oh, they know presentations. I was part of an organization where a senior VP showed up and half of the managers had never stood up and given a
mm.
presentation in front of a group of people, and let's just say it was not good.
It was not pretty.
It was not pretty, and,
It was
I
not
was at
pretty.
the time, I was very new, and I said, "Hey, we should think about this," and I got the "new guy, be quiet" kinda look. So I was like,
Yeah,
"Okay."
yeah.
At the very end, the SVP says, "Hey, just for some professional development." He said it very nonchalantly, but as C-suite people don't just uh, say things unless there's a meaning behind what they're saying. He says, "Hey, next time when you guys are doing this,
Mm,
brief the talk to the person, don't talk to the computer screen." And that was the remark I said. I
right,
said, "Hey, study your," because we practiced the day before. And I said, "Hey, make sure you know what you're talking about and just talk about the highlights. Don't read the slides or whatever." And then we had a lot of that. So I would say the size of the companies, going back to the question, is very a wide range. But I think
mm,
most of the leadership problems are are generally the same. Uh, how do I build
right,
trust with my people? How do I gain time back? And I'm hiring leaders that don't necessarily have the leadership experience that might have looked good on their resume. So
right,
I'm having to figure out how do I teach them. And I say that's why it's very important that relationships matter within your organization. Hey, you may have one manager who's very good at teaching them stuff. How do we do that? Obviously, somebody like me can come in and we can build relationships and I can say, hey, this is how we do this. Everything from how to give constructive feedback to someone who's not doing well. It's real easy
Right.
to say, hey, Greg, you are doing phenomenal. You had these three tasks, you did them great. That's awesome. But it's very difficult to say, hey, Greg, that report you sent me looked like somebody in third grade wrote it. Uh,
Right.
how do
Right.
we get there, right? What were they
Right.
supposed to do? What they did? How are we gonna do it? And what resources am I going to give you to help you get better? And
Right.
that's where a lot of people they could say
Absolutely.
you did something wrong, but I say, well, how do you give feedback to employees? And one of the
Right.
questions it comes back to, I said, you have to tell them what they did wrong. What is the
Mhm.
expectation? How are
Mhm.
we going to work together to develop a plan to get you better? I'm just going to say writing. Writing maybe the thing. So how are we going to go about this? Hey, maybe I start having you do the newsletters or something for the company so you can get practice doing that. If
Right.
your presentation skills aren't up to par, maybe I have you teach a workshop for people through Zoom so you can get an opportunity to stand up
Right.
and speak. But you can't just tell someone that they did something wrong without. And then what tools and how can I help you? What resources do you need for me so I can give you these resources to help you get better. And if you
Right.
could do that, then the feedback doesn't necessarily sound like, oh, they're picking on me. It's like, hey, together, collectively, we're going to work on this problem together, and I am here to help you.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, if you uh, want something or expect something from someone, you have to give them the opportunity to be able to deliver that, right? And in order to deliver that, they have to have opportunities to practice and hone that skill. And I agree with you. And it may not be presenting to large groups of people. It may be leading the weekly status meeting or whatever it is, right? Start small, but build up. And it helps build people's confidence. But I agree with you. And I love your 3P, I'm going to call it your 3P philosophy. Um, and that, that is something that resonates with me because it's not only something that can be applied to business and a business setting, but it can be applied to life and really think about it with your relationships and with your family and with your friends. And I'd love to know, being in the military for 33 years and 2 months, how that, that philosophy must have been how you manage through your relationships and building those and your family. You have the philosophy didn't just come out of thin air, right? I think it's something that you were living and breathing for a long time, and you just gave it a title and a purpose for a
Oh
corporate
yeah,
world. But
for me, I think what it really came to is that um, no one likes to do something the purpose part, right? I always hated when someone said, "Do it because the worst words in leadership are because I said so.
because I
If
said so.
if a leader tells someone because I said so, they have totally missed the elevator to the top floor of leadership. They've just totally missed it. If someone asks you, like people in the military would say this, well, when the bullets are flying, I don't have time to explain. I was in the Army 33 years, and I will tell you this much. It I can count on one hand how many times I did not have time to explain a why to someone,
Right.
right? So, um, if you have to create the time to explain why they're doing it. And the other thing is make sure that they understand the why. Like the why behind the work is what's going to give you the motivation to accomplish the task that you're trying to set. People use something you said. People will take ownership when they understand. That's why when you get
Yeah.
when you're having these conversations about the purpose of the task, you work together. Yes, You as the leader have to make the ultimate decision. But if you bring people in and say, "Hey, we this is why we talk about what's his name? Simon Sinek wrote the book on leaders eat last, right? I always say leaders speak last, right? In a
Hmm.
meeting, when you are a leader, if you say, "Hey, we've got this new project. I want this, this, and this done. What do you think?" Everyone does this. Okay,
Yep.
sounds good, right?
Hmm.
Instead, you say, "Hey, we have this new project, and Greg, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts?" There's a big difference in letting
Huge.
you speak because now you're getting, as the leader, you're getting ideas from your people. Your people feel like their voices are being heard because if you say, "This is what I want to do," who's going to say, "Yeah, boss, I don't think that's a good idea, and here's why."
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I
Is so important, that servant leadership style. It really is. It is my leadership style. It speaks to my heart. I am not about go off and get it, make it successful. I am about I speak last in meetings. I sit very quietly in a corner. I try not to be an overpresence because I agree with you. The success of the team, the success of growth in a business is determined by the collective and the diversity of thought that goes into delivering at the end, right? If one person could do it and foresee everything, we wouldn't need this vast team of people. And so if we have this team of people that we have accumulated and have there, we've brought them together, let's leverage them and give them the respect of what it is their expertise are so they can contribute, right? I'm sure in the military that is how it works as well, right? The leader, as a leader, you have to be able to make a decision and stick to that decision.
yes,
But I think it's also very important. So I'm not saying, oh, don't be decisive, right? I think that you have to say, okay, I've heard everybody. And this is where I am deciding to go because I've taken all of this data and information in and I've analyzed it and I've thought about it, and whatever process you have to go through to get to a determination. I think that as a leader, you need to own a decision, right? So I'm not saying don't own it, but I'm saying that, what speaks to my soul and my leadership style is that as a servant leader, I'm very much about listening to my team, giving my team an opportunity to shine, an opportunity to represent the work that it is that they do. And that's the kind of culture that I try to create in my teams. And I will tell you very proudly that I have a super high retention rate on all of my teams. And there were many times where they got calls from recruiters, and during these little blips of time where they were paying tons of money and they could have left and sometimes even doubled their salary. And they would rather stay in a culture working in a team where they felt camaraderie and they felt like, I got your back, you got my back, and you're not walking, you work next to me, you did your work, you're not walking out the door at 5 p.m. if I'm still there working, you're saying, how can I help you, Daniela? Let me roll up my sleeves and help you, right? And if I say to you, Gregory, there's absolutely nothing you can do right now to help me because it is specific to this skill set, you'll say, okay, I can help you, I'm going to go get you some dinner, something, right? There is that sense of
absolutely.
camaraderie that's created in a culture within the team, which I think is, the leader is not only about leading to delivery, but it's leading the definition and the culture of the team and how everybody works together. um
And
and
that
I'm
takes
sure,
that takes
from a military standpoint.
yeah, that takes a lot of,
Yeah.
and not every leader has that. The successful ones do. And the other thing that I've talked that I find does not happen as much. This is probably one shocker, is organizations are not as active in this exit strategy or exit surveys. We don't sit down with people and say, what is this organization doing well? And what does this
Right.
organization need to work on? And
Right.
I, when I asked, I said, I asked this one company, I said, what are your exit surveys saying? And then it was like, well, and then the HR person kind of stood up and was trying to cover for the boss, which I knew what she was doing, but I let it go. But they don't do them. How are
Right.
you going to become better as a leader if you're not getting feedback? Right?
Because it's easier for people not to look in the mirror.
Exactly.
They don't want, they don't want to acknowledge, and um it's just easier that way. Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. It's
why.
easier to say, well, I thought I was, I think I'm doing a great job. But then
Yeah.
when you like, because when you ask, right, we have this thing. I'm working on a manuscript for a book, uh, and one of the things I talk about is we call them the spotlight, right? The spotlight
Mhm.
is the person who, when all the senior people come around, they are Mr. Johnny on the spot. They're the ones that's working so
Mm.
hard. You're like, oh wow, who is that right there working so hard, right? But as
Right.
soon as those senior leaders leave, poof, they're not doing nothing, right? So
Right.
we call them spotlights. Every organization, when you ask the team who the spotlight is, they can point it out. And if you ask them in confidence, how was your leader doing? Everyone normally has the exact same feedback.
Right.
Because people want to tell the truth. People want to say, "Hey, my
Right.
boss doesn't listen to me," or "My boss has multiple personalities," or "My boss is never on time," or, you know,
Mm.
"I don't know how I" and if you ever have to have an employee come up to you and ask you, "How am I doing?" You were missing out on giving your people feedback. Now, the military has a set schedule, depending on your position. You know, you either get feedback
Mhm.
once a month or you get it quarterly. Uh, and you get an evaluation yearly, or if your supervisor is leaving. So like if you're my supervisor and you do my yearly evaluations and you're leaving to go take another position, you have to give me one before you leave so the new person comes in, they can start fresh. So I
Right.
know
Right.
it seems like overkill, but that's just the way we did it. But your people should never wonder how they're doing. They should always do that. And all of those things contribute
Right.
to trust because trust, you're going to need that trust when everything is in chaos. And how you lead during chaos is going to tell a lot about who you are as a leader.
Right. That that is that is a great point, right? As if you know how you're doing in the moment, it doesn't affect velocity either, right? That
Right, right. Absolutely.
constant um growth trajectory is achieved, right? So, uh, um, thank you so much for your time today. This has been such a great conversation. I would love to have some closing remarks from you. What is the best piece of advice or tidbit of information that you would like us all to walk away with today?
I there's a couple two things. Um there are you are the sum of the people that you hang out with. So if you have a
Mm,
successful organization and a successful life, I can look at the people around you and tell you who you are and who you are going to be. So, number 1, surround yourself with good and positive people and the sky is the sky is the limit.
right.
Secondly, if you are not happy doing what you are doing, then stop doing it. If you are in
Yeah.
a position that is not creating happiness, and money doesn't necessarily have to define your happiness. Take a look at what it is you're doing and you define what success is. Don't let a
Right.
corporate or some slogan create what success means for you. Success is how you define it. If you go to a runner, someone who has never run before, and you say, What is success to you? To them, it may be finishing a 5K. But you ask an avid ultra marathoner, they may say running a 5K in X amount of time is success. So success is going to be different for everyone. So I want
Right.
you to make sure that you define success for you. And for all my leaders out there, please embrace purpose, presence, and passion. Those 3 things cost no money, but if you can
No
implement them,
money.
you can change the culture of your organization. And if you need me to come out, hey, my shameless plug, please reach out on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, and I will definitely get back to you as quickly as I can.
I love it. I love it. It has been my pleasure and my honor to have you on today. Thank you for sharing all of your wonderful wisdom and experience with our audience. And I hope to have you on again soon and give us a little bit about what's moving and shaking and happening in leadership worlds.
Absolutely.
I will I will look forward to that very much. I really enjoyed having you. And for anybody out there, check out his newsletter, connect with him. He really is a fantastic human with great insight and great advice. So I recommend you guys reach out and connect. Thank you so much. Have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful day, and we will be back soon.
Thanks, everyone, and please take care.
Thanks for joining us today in the Give Back Lab. If today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you just feel seen, share it forward. That's how change begins. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking truth, and giving back in your own way. The lab is always open.